Welcome to your practice report for the 2019 Singapore Grand Prix. Lots of hours of practice this morning, and this is your weekly chance just to narrow it down into 10 simple minutes, the main highlights, the key points, the timing, all that juicy stuff. In yesterday's video, we had a look at the circuit. It's a tight, twisty, narrow street circuit that we're used to seeing a few fluky results, some big names crashing out in recent races, especially in 2017 into the first corner. We did our hot lap and we had a real deep dive into the real lack of overtaking opportunities on this circuit. And I think in a similar fashion to Monaco, and I suppose most street circuits in Formula 1 in the modern era, qualifying is key. Positioning yourself as high up the grid as possible is going to be a huge game changer when it comes to the race on Sunday. Unlike Monaco, however, there are a few overtaking spots, and this year on the circuit we have 3 DRS zones, and not only will that be key in the race, it'll also be key in qualifying. Extra chance for the Ferraris that are traditionally quick on the straight line, that have bought an upgrade to their downforce package this weekend. That could benefit their car quite nicely. And already, in both practice sessions this morning, Ferrari, a team that yesterday, and I think many people predicted in the Formula 1 world before we got to this weekend, we expected Ferrari to struggle here. And yet, at least on one side of the garage, that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. It also seems to be the side of the garage that currently isn't in the best of form. Let's stop beating around the bush now, guys. Let's jump into the times for FP1. So it was Max Verstappen who did go quickest, taking an early stranglehold on the weekend, a time of 1:40.259. Sebastian Vettel, I think, was a surprise P2, as I just mentioned a minute ago. People expected Ferrari to be a comfortable third best out of the top 3 teams. A circuit with a similar style layout to Hungary. We expected to see similar results, but early on, Sebastian Vettel at least seems to be right on the money. And it appears over both sessions that it's going to be a fight between Verstappen, Vettel and Hamilton for pole. That is a juicy Singapore Grand Prix right there. Hamilton P3 with Bottas P4. We'll talk about Bottas in a moment because it wasn't quite a smooth sailing session for the Finn. Still on the hunt for his first ever Formula 1 World Championship, his first ever win in Singapore. Alex Albon P5, his third ever race for Red Bull this weekend. It's going to be our first real opportunity to gauge how close Albon is to Verstappen this particular weekend. He was 1.2 seconds off his teammate in the first session, but just to recall your minds just a little bit, Belgium, Albon started from the back with engine penalties. Last time out in Monza, Verstappen did the same. He started with the back from engine penalties. So both of them, at the moment, no penalties. It's going to be a straight out fight between the 2 Red Bulls, and I think a lot of people are really interested to see just how high Albon can be up the grid. Hülkenberg, a man, I want to say under pressure, but a man who's desperate to prove his worth, I think is a better way of putting it. Obviously at the moment, out of a drive for next year, so a P6 early on, setting up his weekend quite nicely. Then came the 2 McLarens. Thought they were going to struggle a bit this weekend, but in the first 2 practice sessions, looking quite strong. Sainz just edging out Norris in P7 and 8, and it was the 2 Toro Rossos rounding out the top 10. Kvyat just edging out his teammate in P9, and Pierre Gasly 2.1 seconds off Max Verstappen in P10. Moving down into the lower ends of the field, Daniel Ricciardo was best of the rest, sort of, in P11. Seems to be behind his teammate Nico Hülkenberg this weekend. A good chance for Hülkenberg to score some good points in the Drivers' Championship to really push him up in the fight for best of the rest. Romain Grosjean retained for Haas in 2020. What kind of a boost is that going to give him this weekend? A track he's done fairly well at in the past. It seems to be ahead of Kevin Magnussen at the moment during the first 2 practice sessions. Antonio Giovinazzi, we don't quite know about his future yet, but also in front of his teammate Kimi Raikkonen, both in P13 and 14. Alfa Romeo bringing a few odd upgrades this weekend. Lance Stroll P15 in the heavily upgraded Racing Point. This is going to be their last upgrade of the season ahead of Kevin Magnussen, Robert Kubica, who announced his Formula 1 retirement yesterday as P17, Sergio Perez P18, Charles Leclerc P19, and George Russell P20. Talking about some of those guys at the bottom end there, before we do a generic chat about the first session, Sergio Perez down quite comfortably behind his teammate, behind the Williams of Robert Kubica as well. Perez is a little bit poorly this weekend, not feeling too great. Esteban Ocon sniffing around a little bit. The team are pretty confident that Perez will be fine this weekend, but if he was to have to miss the race through injury, it would be Ocon that would jump into that seat. Fun fact for you there. Charles Leclerc, car broke down fairly early on in the session, so any Leclerc fans, I wouldn't be too worried. Valtteri Bottas finished P5 into the barriers early on in the session. Mercedes got it fixed for the afternoon, but his confidence, I think, will be a little bit shaky going into quali. And Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton had a bit of an on-track discussion, shall we say, but that all seems to be fine now. Moving on then into the second session, it was Lewis Hamilton this time that topped the times with a 1:38.7, almost 2 seconds in front of the best time Max Verstappen was able to do in the first practice session. Verstappen himself was P2, just behind Lewis Hamilton, almost 2/10 behind, but that in a street circuit like this, which is quite a long lap, a 1:38 or 1:39 in most cases for these drivers, is a fairly long lap, so 2/10, that's not too bad at all. Sebastian Vettel, even though almost a second behind Lewis Hamilton's time, struggled to get in a real representative lap, and I personally think he could do a much better job come qualifying. Bottas, 1.1 seconds off his teammate. A little bit disturbing, whether that's because of confidence out of the first session, not too sure. Alex Albon P5, again a second behind his teammate. Charles Leclerc, a second behind his teammate. So all three of those drivers, I think, will hope to do better come quali. In FP2, it was Sainz who was best of the rest, with Hülkenberg just behind him and Norris again behind him. So it seems not only that once again it's going to be a tight battle between McLaren and Renault, Ricciardo seems to be the one that's the slowest of the four, which hasn't happened on many occasions so far in 2019. And once again, just making it into the top 10 was Pierre Gasly. A real difficult week for him so far this week. He's really going to want to put in a good performance to try and help boost his chances of getting a good seat next season. Just 1/10 behind Gasly was his teammate Danny Kvyat, so it looks like once again those two pretty evenly matched. I'm really enjoying that story at Toro Rosso in the second half of 2019. Daniel Ricciardo behind the two Toro Rossos again. Again, nothing really too much of a concern just yet. Ricciardo is definitely one of those laps that, when it really matters, when it really counts, can put in a bit of a stonking lap. But at the moment, seems to be struggling a little bit for Renault in Singapore. Sergio Perez seemed to be doing a much cleaner job in the second session. However, did have an incident with Kevin Magnussen, squeezed him into the wall a little bit. That's under investigation, and there may be a penalty there, but in himself, felt a little better. Giovinazzi ahead of Raikkonen again in the second session, P14 and P16 respectively for the two Alfa Romeo boys. They were split by Lance Stroll. Grosjean P17, Russell P18, Magnussen P19, and Robert Kubica rounded out the top 20 in P20. I think looking at that second session, one of the biggest surprises for me, and this might surprise you, is the pace of the Williams. 2.6 seconds. George Russell was off the quickest time. Robert Kubica only 3 seconds off the quickest time. But also right in there with the two Haas cars. I said this yesterday in our preview that historically Haas haven't seemed to have done the best job in 2019 on circuits like this. And when you factor in as well that Haas have really struggled in humid, hot races, hot countries, like Singapore definitely is, this should not be a track which suits them. But on the flip side, it should be a track which suits the Williams quite nicely and really highlights the positive things within that package. So, as we'll move on to in a minute, your predictions that we went through yesterday, I picked out some of my favourite for this week. But I think Williams, this could be one of their best chances of the season to get into Q2. And maybe, I think it's a bit too much still to suggest that Williams could get points on race pace. But I think you only need a couple of incidents up in the front, a little bit like 2017. Maybe Williams have a car which is capable on race pace to keep up with the lower end of the midfield, and maybe, like I say, if there's a bit of carnage, like Alex Albon was able to do in the second session, hitting the wall down at turn 10, completely locked up, lost his front wing, but was able to get going again. I think if there's a few incidents in the race, Williams could be the ones to capitalise. Moving on then, I've picked out 3 of your predictions that we did from yesterday, starting off with the Derpy Muffin. In qualifying, he's gone for Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Vettel and Albon. Quali shock, Leclerc crashes in Q2. Leclerc at the moment on a real, confidence bubble, on a brilliant run of form, but the Derpy Muffin maybe expecting Leclerc to have an issue in quali. He's also predicted in the race for Verstappen to have an engine failure. Honda have done really well this year, so I think that would be a real surprise if they were to let down Verstappen, and Verstappen to have 3 races on the bounce, not scoring many points. Mostly an F1 fan, has gone with a Max Verstappen pole position with a Valtteri Bottas P2. He's also gone with a biggest shock for Lewis Hamilton crashing in Q2, so quite a few of you. I mean, he's even gone in with a flying lap and at turn 13, so a very detailed prediction there from mostly an F1 fan, but I don't think Hamilton's crashed in quali since Brazil 2017, but correct me if I'm wrong. Max Verstappen winner, Magnussen first retirement, driver of the day Albon, best of the rest, Carlos Sainz. He's also gone with an Albon podium. Quite a few of you going with that. And the Raging Rhino has gone with an Albon win. Lots of love for Alex Albon in the comments this week. I also, in my predictions, went for an Albon podium. He's gone with the best of the rest of Norris, driver of the day Albon. Pole for Hamilton. It's just a complete mess, is Raging Rhino's predictions. It's all over the place. Russell Q2, everything's going on here. But I think that's why I loved it. A real crazy race, a continuation of the incredible races we have had so far in 2019. We're on a real streak now. Ever since France, every single race, I have given an 8, a 9, or even a 10 out of 10. Many people were expecting, under the floodlights, a street circuit with 3 cars potentially in the mix for pole position in the race win. This should be a good one. Tomorrow is the qualifying report. I should be joining the F1 Word live for the quali watch along, so join me over on his channel if you fancy listening to more F1 nonsense. If you're here and you are new, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.